currently. And then from that low rate, you can then stack on top of that a 3-2-1 buy down. So that, let's just say the rates are 6.875. You can buy down to 6 and then have another 3-2-1 buy down. So your first year, your rate is 3. So there's ways of getting really aggressive with buy downs that I thought people knew about it. They don't. So I want to make sure you know about it so that when you do find a position where you have a buyer that really wants to capitalize on a very low rate right now, we have one locked in where the first year the rate is at 2.625. So it's possible. It takes a little bit of negotiating with the sellers, but we can make that happen. So if you're interested in stacking buy downs, let me know, and I'm happy to walk you through that. So let's go ahead and get started here with the 2024 forecast. Let me go ahead and share my screen. And we'll go ahead and get going here. All right, so supply and demand is the word of the day for the year, actually for last year as well. But what are interest rates going to do? What are they doing right now? What can we expect? What's the timing of it? That's all questions that we all have. So I'm going to jump right in and I'm going to go over what I see, what everyone in the market is seeing, and we're going to really get into the weeds here. So let's go ahead and get started here. So this is where rates are doing right now. This is where we're at today. So we're up 19 basis points. That's a good day. Anything over a 10 to 15 basis point move, actually 15 basis point move is a hard line where lenders start to adjust their rates for the better. So today we're going to get most likely we're going to get an 1/8 better in rate or something close to that as we go on through the day. But this is what we've seen over the last week. It's been pretty flat. And then we had a little bit of bounce downward. We had it's Christmas. We had the holidays with Thanksgiving. A lot of information was coming out regarding sales that was higher than expectations. We had jobs numbers that were coming in higher than expectations. So we kind of lost a little bit. And then we had a couple of good days where inflation came back and said, hey, inflation's cooler than expected. And then we had some more jobs numbers come out. And that was for the month of December. And we're kind of pivoting right here. So we're about the same as where we were about 2-3 weeks ago, but we are coming back north on the candlestick charts. So what I want to really show you is some good news. And that's what's coming up here. It's called the golden cross. So this is a term that's used when we look at the interest rates on when the 25-day moving average, the 50-day moving average crosses over with the 200-day moving average. That is called a golden cross. Usually whenever that happens, when this 50-day moving average goes above the 200-day, you stay above this and you continue to rise. And that's a very good trend setter. So we can expect this to continue and have mortgage rates continue to get better in the near future. Again, they're going to get better, but it's never in a straight line, right? So this graph goes straight up, but there's some down days as well. So this golden cross is really good news. And let's hope that it continues to give us what we want, and that's lower rates moving forward. So here's the average rates for today. Again, we lost a little bit. We got into the 6.75 range a little bit in the last couple of weeks. We're in the high 6s right now with no points. Again, this is with good credit. If you have somebody that doesn't have good credit, it's going to have some loan level adjustments to putting them higher. But you're in the high 6s to low 7s across the board on from 15-year to 30-year and look at adjustable rate mortgages are higher because the inverted yield curve. But this is kind of what you can expect. No points for a very good buyer. And again, if they have lower credit score is the #1 factor in rates. So this is what's happening this week.
Don, I hate to bother you, but I have a couple people saying they're in the waiting room, waiting to get in.
Hold on one second. Remember, that's the Hold on one second.
No problem.
Let me stop my share and go in there, admit all. Sorry about that, guys.
No problem. I just
wanted to clap for those that came in late. I'm just kidding. Welcome to the show, guys. So we're going over kind of what interest rates are right now. Let me go back to that real fast. And from current slide. And this is what's happening this week. So this week we've got not much going on early in the week. We have a couple auctions. Again, auctions are where the government sells bonds to raise capital. On Thursday, we have the jobless claims. That's going to be important. I've heard rumors of some big companies like Intel and others that have layoffs coming. I have personal friends that have lost their jobs in the last couple of weeks, which is never a good thing. But that jobless claims, this should be peaking up. And again, that's what the Feds wanted when they raise rates. They want the market to be slower, and that's going to help mortgage rates down the line. But on Friday, we have PCE, which is the Fed's favorite gauge of inflation. So we're going to watch that carefully on Friday. And that's what's happening this week. So let's go into what's happening for 2024. So core inflation. Year over year, core CPI is 4.0, PCE is 3.2. So personal consumption expenditure. This is shelter. Now, I know you've probably been beaten over the head with this over the last year. The shelter inflation is 44% of the CPI report. So 44% of that inflation number is the shelter costs. And if you look, June of 2022, June 2023, there's this huge drop from where the inflation was really high on shelter costs. Now, the way that the Fed looks at this is on an average. So if you look at the average, this is what they see. We see it down here on real time. The Feds are still looking at the average of the last 12 months. So they're looking at it in the yellow and the shelter year over year change, and that's what they're making their policies on. So we know it's lower than it actually is, but the average over the last 12 months is lower. So we know as this continues to average out with lower numbers added to this average, we know that the inflation numbers are going to come down. And guess what? That's what we want. And that's what mortgage rates like. So here's the lag effect. In reality, it says it's 4.0, but the lag effect of 1.8, it's in real time, it's 2.2. And keep in mind, the Feds, they said their target is 2%. So they're close. And then the core PCE, it's like 2.3 if you take into effect the lag effect there. So shelter and CPE, this is the numbers that we use on average. So if you look at February of 2023, we're at 0.7, 0.75. December 22, we're at 0.8. We're going to replace these higher numbers with the new lower numbers as we go. And as we do that, it's going to continue to drop the overall average, and that's going to replace these big numbers with low numbers. And then here's the kind of the trajectory of where what we're going to be replacing. And that's why we know when we see the average, we know that if it's going to stay below in the 0.2 range, which we think it's going to happen, we know that this shelter, the 44% of this CPI report is shelter. We know it's going to come down. So we know that the Feds are on the right track for cutting in the near future. And let's get into that just for a second. So expectations for inflation and the Fed cut. So we know that the Feds came out and they said, okay, we're pausing. And then they hinted in December that they're probably going to start cutting before they hit their actual goal of 2%. So that means when the inflation numbers are in the mid to low twos, they're probably going to start cutting. So what does that look like and who is talking about it? So first off, and we released in January, so January 26th is the PCE, right? We're going to get that. It's estimated at 0.1. If it's just going to be what they expect, 0.1 to 0.2, and as we go through the year, that's very low, and it's going to be replacing those higher numbers. So we're replacing a 0.39 with a 0.1, and that's going to lower it to 2.87. And that's January 31st is the meeting, the next Feds talk about it. And then here's the numbers that we're going to be replacing and what the year over year is going to be. So we're in January, and year over year, 2.47. We're going to get to their target to where there's probably going to start cutting at 2.21 pretty soon. And when that happens, that's when I think the Feds will think about cutting their rates. Not when they hit 2, but when they hit the 2.21. So we're in March. Remember when I talked about March Madness? March and May, I think, is going to be the hot time where people are going to really start jumping in back in the markets with the lower rates. So here's the odds on the Fed cuts. So it's a 68% chance that they're going to cut in March, the Fed funds rate. In May, it's almost 100% chance that they're going to cut the Fed funds rate. So keep in mind, perception is reality. When the markets, all of the news is going to start saying rate cuts, rate cuts. I promise you, consumers that maybe they might not know anything about mortgage rates or the Fed funds rate or how it all works together. They're going to call you. They're going to say, I heard the Fed funds rate or the Fed cut the rates. Let's start shopping again. It's going to happen. Now, this is a dot chart. So each dot represents each Fed member for the year that the interest rates are going to be cut. So they vote, they tell you what they think, how many cuts are going to be for that year. And each dot is a Fed member. So in 2024, 2 people think it's only going to be cut a little bit or 0 cuts. 1 person thinks 25 basis points. You've got 5 that say it's going to be a 50 basis point cut this year. We have 6 that say 75 basis point cut. We have 4 that say there's going to be a 100 basis point cut. And 1 person thinks there's going to be a 150 basis point cut to the Fed funds rate in 2024. Now, the next year, there's 1 person that says nothing. And then there's 1 person that says it's going to be another cut down here into the 4 and a 5. And look at the trajectory of each year what the Fed thinks the Fed funds rate is going to be. This is going to drive the interest rates lower and lower as we go. So I'm super excited about this. I hope that, hold on one second. I think we have some other people trying to get in. Yep. I'm excited about this because this means this year we're going to have lower rates. The next year we're going to have lower rates. And even into the next year, we'll have lower rates. So this is what the Feds are already planning. Now, there could be some things that change the overall markets. The whole shipping issue through the Red Sea is become an issue with potential inflation that we have to really be careful on. But let's see what else can really help the markets. That's the trajectory we're in. So good news there. So the Fed balance sheet. The Fed has been buying mortgage-backed securities for a long time. And if you notice in 2020, this graph shot up like a rocket. They started buying mortgage-backed securities and treasuries at an ungodly amount. And they did it very quickly because we started seeing trouble with the market when COVID hit. Now this, when they bought them, drove interest rates lower because the more people buy bonds, the price goes down, rates fall, it's a good thing. So they artificially brought rates down, and we know what happened, and they continue to do that through this. But then they reached a point where they bought so many, now the balance sheet of the Fed is so high that it's a problem. So now at this point, there's 8.5 trillion. Well, they started selling off their balance sheet, basically selling bonds to the market, and they cut about $1.4 trillion in bonds that they sold over the last year or so. So they're on a good pace. Now, that's one of the reasons when there's a flood of bonds to the market, that's one reason why rates went up, because they sold off 1.4 trillion in bonds. And that's usually not a good sign for the bond market when there's so many bonds in the market like that are being first sold. So, but let's look at the average, because when can we expect them to stop selling these? Because when they stop selling these mortgage-backed securities on these treasuries off their balance sheet, rates will get faster, better, faster. So let's look at this. So in 2014 to 2018, we had an average held on the balance sheet of 22.4% of the balance sheet of the GDP was mortgage-backed securities and treasuries. And pre-COVID, we were at 21. Now we're at 33. So if we can get down to about the 22% range, that'll be normal. That's when people think that the Fed is going to slow down their roll on selling off those bonds. Remember, when they sell off the bonds, and it's a bad thing. So when they stop selling, mortgage rates are going to get better again. So let's look at a little more details on this. January 2024, now we're at 25.6. Here's where they need to get. Remember that they need to get to about 22%, which is the average. That's not going to be till September of 2024. So that's when we're going to catch more steam in this June to October. At the end of the year, we're going to, I think, roll a little bit more steam towards lower rates. And I think we're going to see a little bit more improvement here as well. So they're going to get better at the beginning. They're going to get even better at the end. And this is exciting news for us. So hopefully they won't continue to start selling and just continue selling. But based on what their past history, they're going to keep the average balance sheet of the GDP around 22 to 23. So that's good news. And if the markets continue to slow, this is a graph again of what mortgage rates do during recessions. So if there are continued job losses, the markets continue to slow, the Feds continue to cut to kind of ease the pain of a slow market, we're gonna expect rates to continue to drop. And there are some industries that are already in a recession. So they can't call it a recession for everyone yet, but there are recessionary industries that are out there currently. And let's see, hold on one second. Yep, there's nobody there. Okay. So here's the forecast, guys. Here's what we expect. Mid fives to high sixes is kind of where we're going to be throughout the year. So timing is key, but I think we're going to be in the low sixes pretty soon. And I think we're going to get to the mid fives through the end of the year. Now, nothing's ever in a straight line. So it's going to go jagged. It's going to maybe have a blip up. We're going to see one report that's going to show inflation got a little hot because something happened. And then we're going to continue to see that come down. So if you tell your customers that you're going to be able to get a rate in the mid fives this year, they're going to get excited about that because they reach the eights. So we have very short memories for consumers, very, very short, memories. So when rates hit 8, people thought the end of the world was coming. When they hit 6, it was a light at the end of the tunnel, magic, right? It was magic. But if you said the rate was going to be 6 back during COVID, people would have lost their minds that I'd never buy a house ever in the history of life in the 6s. But they will, and they have, because I don't know if you've noticed, but since January, this last couple of weeks, we've seen a tick up on a number of calls we're getting to get those old pre-qualifications kind of revamped. So we are going to continue to see rates come down. Under 6 should really bring out buyers. And we have an issue with what? We have an issue with inventory, right? So it's going to be crazy. Now's the time to buy before rates do drop, because once they do drop, everyone's going to come out of the woodwork. It's like pouring water on an anthill. Everyone's going to come out, right? So we want to get into a home now because you can always refinance later, but you can't get a good deal now. Sellers are more willing to give you credits toward buying the rate down or credits toward closing cost or a lower price now than they will be in 6 to 8 months. So would you rather buy now, have a little bit higher rate, and then refinance? Yes, absolutely. Because if you have to bid $15,000 over ask in 6 months, and you have to compete with other people, it's just going to be more difficult. So now's the time to buy, and we're going to see the 10-year Treasury between 3 and 4.4, or 3% to 4.4 drop, I should say. Normal spreads are going to really help. So I'm excited to see what rates are going to be doing. We can bank on the fact that they're going to be lower. That's the good thing. And here's some more information on forecasts coming up. So real estate forecast, this is inventory. So in 2023, we had just over 1 million in inventory nationwide. 2021, we know that the problem in 2022, 2021, it came down. It keeps continuing to come down. Now, we had a little increase inventory 2023. And then let's look at this chart, because this is a really interesting chart. The blue chart represents the households that are being formed. That means, like my kids going out and becoming homeowners. That is a household that is being formed. That's new people going out that need housing. The number of households being formed far exceeds the amount of homes being built. So that's the completions. We still have an inventory problem, and we're still continuing to have an inventory problem until builders catch up. But the more people are being pushed into the housing that need shelter compared to the building, that's going to always be in our favor as far as inventory, supply and demand, prices always being stable and appreciating. This is the chart we really need to keep a really good eye on. If you were to look at this chart, and I should have put it on here, but if you were to look at this chart in 2006, 7, 8, you would have seen the amount of completions far exceeding. They were way higher than the households being formed. And that's why we had a supply and demand issue. We had too many homes for sale and not enough people needing them. And then once the loans turned into you have to prove your income, all those people buying investment properties that didn't have any income, they stopped. Then the demand came down, builders stopped, and then we have what happened in 2008 and 9. So we have a good place right here as far as inventory. And this is going to really push us forward into the future as far as having a nice, stable housing market. So that's exciting. So 2014, we're going to see appreciation between 4.5% and 5%. That's based on most. And Tina Tambor, I think, is right on track with this number as well. And we're going to see a 15 to 20% uptick in the number of transactions, which is music to my ears. And I can't wait for this market to really turn towards a positive, because it's been difficult. I'm not going to lie. It has been a challenging market this last year and a half, but there's still people that need homes, and there's still people that need to get into housing. So there's a couple questions here. I'm going to look in the chat real fast. Oh, that was looking for info about the events. Got it. We're going to have a calendar of events. So Jennifer, we're going to have a calendar of events on our website soon. We're just putting that together right now. So we'll send you a list of information on that. So good question. Any questions on what's happening with the market? And sorry, somebody was a little late to the party. Any questions on the rates expected to be in the 5s and low 6s as we progress through the year? Any questions on that? And again, this is recorded, so if you came in late, you can always go back and watch it. But do you guys have any questions on what's happening with the markets right now and why?
I was at open houses this weekend, and I talked about the stackable, a little bit about the stackable, but I don't really understand it. So
Okay.
I definitely want to connect you with those people and definitely get together with you on a better understanding. But it was kind of fun to, bring it up. Like, I have an awesome lender that, can, has very creative, and hopefully don't get discouraged about these higher rates, and that kind of perked up their interest. So definitely want to get, I'm going to work on everyone today on
Perfect.
trying to connect you with them.
That's fantastic. So yeah, stackable, just to give you a little bit more behind that, you can do a rate buy down. You can pay points up front to get a rate permanently that's lower. So let's just say the rate right now is 6.875. You buy that down to 5.875. So the rate forever is going to be 5.875. But then you add a temporary rate buy down to that at 3.21. So you're 3% lower than the 5.875 the first year, and then the 2 lower the next year, then 1, and then you go back to 5.875 the fourth year. So you could have the first payment that they buy their home on based on that scenario be 2.875 right now. So super exciting. It takes some negotiating with the seller to get that done, but there are some homes that have been on the market a little while that sellers are maybe more apt to do that than others. So yeah, we can definitely talk more about that, Cindy. If any of you have any more questions on that, maybe I'll put together a video on that explaining it a lot more in detail. That way you can really capture what that really means. Any other questions, guys? Good question. Any weird loans out there that you've heard of that you have questions on? Now's the time to ask. Well, I'm excited for this year. I think with 15 to 20% more homes being sold, it's going to help all of us, and get after those listings. And if you have any questions on anyone that has had a pre-qualification in the past that maybe has expired, let me know. I'm happy to help any way I can. And we look forward to seeing you at our events as we move forward. So have a great week, you guys, and we will be in touch soon. I'll stay on for a little bit if you guys have any further questions.
Thanks, Sean.
Anytime, guys. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. Likewise.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Always, always, always. Thanks.
Thank you, Sean. It's